When we think of the Indian diaspora, we often think about large Indian communities in the United States, Canada, or the United Kingdom. But there are many more places where people of Indian origin have settled. During a recent visit to the Sint Maarten, I discovered something interesting: a significant presence of Sindhis on the island. Hi, I'm Ruchika Arora. Sint Maarten in the Caribbean is a very small island, better known as a cruise ship destination. It has a fascinating history of Indian settlement shaped by trade, partition, and the movement of Sindhi Hindu families across the seas. So how did Sindhi community living thousands of miles away find its way to a Caribbean island? That was the question on my mind when I visited this beautiful island. I began speaking with members of the community here. What emerged was an interesting story of migration, identity, and resilience that connects this Caribbean island back to India in surprising ways. The Sindhis trace their roots back to Sindh, a region that was once at the heart of the Indus Valley civilization, one of the world's oldest urban cultures, flourishing along riverbanks and seas. Historically, Sindhis were accustomed to living near water, such as rivers, ports, and coastlines. Their trading traditions, maritime connections, and adaptability gave them an edge in global trade for centuries. But history took a dramatic turn in 1947. With the partition of India, Sindh was incorporated into the newly created Pakistan. Unlike other communities, Sindhis did not have a state left for themselves in India. Faced with displacement, many migrated. Some went inland, settling in Gujarat, Maharashtra, and Rajasthan, while others, in keeping with their maritime history, looked outward. They moved across East Africa, the Middle East, Hong Kong, and eventually the Caribbean via ship and sea routes. Sint Maarten gave an opportunity to displaced Sindhi families who lost their ancestral homes during partition in 1947. Among the Caribbean islands, Sint Maarten holds particular importance. Unlike larger territories that absorbed indentured Indians in the 1800s, Sint Maarten became a hub for free migrants, many of whom were entrepreneurs. Its strategic position as a duty-free port, coupled with tourism, attracted Sindhi merchants, who had already established global trading networks after partition. Instead, true to their community's traditions, Sindhis here are almost entirely engaged in trade, such as retail, jewelry, electronics, and hospitality, industries which are aligned with the island's tourism economy. They have built shops catering to cruise passengers, boutiques along Philipsburg's waterfront, and networks that tie back to the larger Sindhi business diasporas in Panama, Curacao, and Aruba. Over time, they developed a visible Hindu community, building temples and participating actively in the island's multicultural identity. To understand why Sindhis settled here, one has to consider not just trade opportunities, but also something deeper: their historic connection to water. This maritime connection continues institutionally through the Indian Merchants Association of Sint Maarten. The Indian Merchants Association was founded in 1975. It constitutes Indian origin business owners, overwhelmingly Sindhi. It functions as a cultural and business anchor, organizes consular camps, and supports festivals. While its focus is on trade, commerce, and representation within Sint Maarten, it also functions as a bridge to India. In many ways, the Indian Merchants Association is a living reminder of the Sindhi community's maritime identity. Traders without borders, connecting their adopted homes to the subcontinent. The Hindu community in Sint Maarten is small in numbers, but strong in visibility. Temples and cultural associations conduct festivals such as Diwali, Holi, and Navratri. Sindhi Hindus also celebrate Cheti Chand, which is a Sindhi New Year linked to Jhulelal, a water deity and community symbol often associated with the river and sea. This tradition is particularly fitting for a community that repeatedly migrated along waterways and now thrives on an island economy. Unlike many Indian communities in the Caribbean who trace their roots to the 19th century slave trade labor migration, mainly from UP and Bihar, the Sindhi migration was very different. They arrived primarily as traders and businessmen in the mid-20th century. And because of their trading instincts and maritime connections, Sindhis specifically settled in coastal and island societies such as Trinidad, Curacao, and Sint Maarten. This choice was not random. It reflected their historic tendency to stay close to water routes, where commerce flourished, continuing a long tradition of maritime trade and adaptation. India's civilization history is deeply tied to seafaring and trade, from Harappan trade routes to Gujarati, Sindhi, and Chettiar merchant diasporas. The Indian Merchant Association in Sint Maarten is therefore not just a trade body, but a part of a larger historical continuum. From the Indus Valley's riverine civilization to partition's forced migration, and finally to the Indian Ocean and Caribbean sea trade links that kept Sindhis tied to India. Today, India maintains close cultural and economic ties with the Caribbean, including Sint Maarten. The Indian Embassy in Caracas runs consular camps and community outreach in Sint Maarten. Organizations like the Global Organization of People of Indian Origin and local Hindu associations keep links alive. Festivals, visits by Indian diplomats, and educational exchanges further strengthen these bonds. For many families on the island, India remains both an ancestral memory and a cultural anchor, even as younger generations grow up as proud Caribbean citizens.